Hi, I'm Dr. Christine Anderson. I am a chiropractor in Los Angeles. My specialty is pediatrics and pregnancy, and I also have a specialty in childhood developmental disorders. And so I'm really focused on the brain and the nervous system and children's development. So my passion is to get to children early on so that we can help the nervous system and the brain grow up healthy. I certainly can help children that come in afterwards with issues, but my preference is that they come in all along as they are growing up. So I'm going to talk about the brain hemispheres and all about how they develop and the certain traits that the hemispheres display, which is in relation to the brain function and how that kind of all works together. So let's begin. With brain development, you can see in the picture there how the brain develops in utero, starting at 3 weeks. Looks like a little type of fish creature. And then by time that baby is born, it's got the shape of what we see and think of as a brain, but it's about 25% the size of an adult brain. And in the first year of life, that brain is going to grow to 60% of the adult size, which is absolutely phenomenal growth. So much goes on in this first year, and it is crucial for brain development. Now, the brain develops from the bottom up. What this means is, at the base of the brain is the brain stem. It's a bridge between the spinal cord and the brain. And this is where a lot of the foundation for brain development begins. So I have done a series on the primitive reflexes and the postural reflexes, and in general, the neurologic reflex as well. So I encourage you to go check these out, because if this foundational aspect of the brain isn't taken care of, and we want to make sure all those ladder rungs are filled in, then you're going to have a bit harder time trying to get the brain to function optimally. So I will put links to all of the videos I did in regards to neurologic reflexes and primitive reflexes and postural reflexes in the description, so you can catch up, because this is sort of the next layer of development with the hemispheres. So this just depicts a bit of a synopsis and summary of what the brain does on the right and the left hemisphere. So people think of with the right hemisphere, it's more having to do with the emotional creative side, while the left hemisphere is usually more associated with being very logical and mathematical and reasoning and intellect. So this is in general what people think about. So each hemisphere in the brain is responsible for controlling specific functions. And this is actually unique to humans. Most, I believe every other animal, their hemispheres do the same things. So they don't have one side dedicated to something and the other side dedicated to the other, like us humans do. Now, having said that, there are some things where there's processing of certain things on both sides. And there are some things that are being processed on both sides, but in a bit of a different way. So it's not, the brain is very complex. It's not, we can't just put it in these concrete sections and go, you do this, you do that. Because the brain is really great at adapting, especially the younger you are. So let's just say a child, they lose part of their brain, right? For whatever reason, other parts of the brain will take over the functions for that part that is no longer usable. And the same thing can happen to a degree in an older person. Let's just say an older person that's had a stroke. So some of those brain areas may not be working, but they can regain function back in enough time. Takes a lot more effort the older you are, but it can happen for those areas that have become unusable in the brain. So the brain is pretty remarkable. It really is. Now, even though they do different things, the brain hemispheres have to talk to each other. So this is why there's a connection called the Corpus Callosum, and that provides the network between the two hemispheres of the brain. They have to talk to each other. If they don't, and things are not in sync, then there's going to be some glitches in functioning. And this really starts to occur if you have one side of the brain that thinks it's the boss of the other, as I explain to children, and is taking over the majority of what's going on, where the other hemisphere is not able to function as strong. So these two parts have to be in sync for timing of the brain. Everything is in the timing, and there's something, a term called neurons that fire together, wire together, and they don't even need to be next to each other. So it has to do with connectivity. And this is really important, and it's really apparent in things that become easier for you to do as you do them more often. So sort of good habits, hopefully, not bad habits. But you don't have to think about it, and things happen more instantaneously because those connections are strengthened, and then perhaps some other brain cells are paired away because they're not needed, and you can get that connectivity happening a lot quicker. So that is, what is going on with the connection between the two. So let's take a little bit closer look at the right brain. And this part of the right hemisphere starts developing in utero and will continue with major development up until about 2 to 3 years of age. So that is when the right hemisphere is really growing and developing. And when you look at a young child, what are they doing at that age? So they're new to the world. They're looking at everything. They're getting the big picture. And this is where subconscious memory comes in, because they're not yet having the intellectual capacity to consciously do things. A 1-year-old cannot fend for themselves. So it's not that they don't have a memory, but it's stored in their cells. And we know now that memory isn't just in the brain, it's really in every part of the body. And this is super crucial. So many things that we do in life they're dictated by things that have gone on so early in our life that we can't even remember, and we do it automatically because it's ingrained in our system. So this is why with childhood development, those early years are so crucial in brain and neurologic and development, and what can affect a child later on, even in adult life. And I see this happening as I work with Neuro Emotional Technique, releasing stuck emotions in the rest of the body. And I'll put a link to what that is in the description if you want to check it out. Nonverbal communication. Babies can't talk, right? They cannot talk. And so they are looking at faces. They are responding with facial expressions and sounds, even crying. That's nonverbal communication. I mean, it's vocalizing, but they are letting you know exactly how they feel, and they are picking up on others' feelings and emotions by facial expression. And this is one of the reasons right now I'm so concerned about the whole masking situation for young children who are developing in these early years. They cannot see people's faces. And this is an experiment. We don't know what kind of ramifications that's going to be in the future for these young children. Balance and proprioception. Young babies will start to push up against gravity, and I go through this in the postural reflexes, so check it out. But they have to go from basically laying down to sitting up to standing and then walking. So they are going to need balance and proprioception for this. And a lot of that is revolving around making sure those primitive reflexes are integrated. So again, look at that first. Moves big muscles, gross motor tone, moving their whole body. That's what children do. They're meant to move their whole body, running and jumping and playing and, not just using their fingers to push buttons on electronics. Emotional quotient and empathy. And in our society, we put a lot of value on intelligence and IQ on the left side of the brain, which we're going to talk about. But really, as I am learning more and more, this emotional quotient is where most people have difficulty, especially if children are having issues with being on the spectrum and whatnot. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But empathy, when children know what's going on with their own body, so you can see right below that sensory control of body, internal sensations. They know when they're hungry, when they're thirsty, when they're tired, they have to pee. They know and they feel internally what is going on with them. They can then make a connection with somebody else. If they don't have that sensory control over their body, they will not understand and cannot empathize with anybody else. So this is crucial development. And then avoidance behavior. So you're going to find that the right and the left brain complement each other. The avoidance behavior comes into they're being cautious, they can control impulses, so it kind of puts the brakes on behaviors, thoughts, actions, words, etc. And so this is the child who's doing something for the first time and they're sort of holding back, or they may tentatively do it. That's what is happening with the right brain. So we're going to move on to the left brain. Now this starts to come online about age 2 to 3, and as we talk through this, you're going to see it's really appropriate for development. It's going to be online for another 2 or 3 years, and then the brain will switch back to the right brain and facilitate more of the right brain development for 2 or 3 years, and it'll go back to the left brain until about age 10, where then the hemispheres will continue to develop symmetrically. So now that you know that, let's go into the left brain. So it is more detail oriented, focusing more on things. This is when babies start to, they'll find the smallest little speck on the floor. It's like, how did you even see that? Well, they're going from that big picture to the little picture. Intelligence quotient, so this is what we think of IQ and being smart, is from the left side of the brain. It moves the small muscles, fine motor control, so this is how we can start to pick up utensils, write. Also speech, you have little muscles here for the voice box, and to have control over those, you have to use this fine motor control of the left side of the brain. It is systemizing, so linear, logical. This is where the very, mathematical computations, I think of Spock, this does not compute. It doesn't make sense. It's maybe, especially with the younger kids, when you say something sarcastic or in a joke, they don't get it because you have to infer certain things. This is where consciousness really comes on, where we have control over our movement and thoughts, and we can then store these memories consciously in our system and retrieve them consciously. It is approach behavior. So think of a child. Once they're able to walk and run, it's like they take off. A toddler, is go, 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 do, do, do. You're just running after them because this is the left brain driving this behavior. With language is really quite complicated, but the understanding of language occurs in the left hemisphere, and then again the action of writing and the action of speech. So there's different parts of the brain that work with language, but for the most part, this understanding and then the action of it is on the left side. And then pattern recognition. The left side of the brain loves repetition and routine. So it's not so happy when things are thrown into the monkey works and schedules change and, surprises, surprise parties or whatever. It's like, what just happened there? So this is the left side of the brain. So a little bit more about just one aspect of the left brain is that this is why most people are right-handed. So I don't know if most people realize, but our left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, and the right side of the brain controls the left. There's a couple of exceptions, notably the olfactory nerve goes directly back to the same side. I think that's the only exception I can think of at the moment, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But by the age of 2, as this left side of the brain takes over, most children are going to start to show handedness, and particularly for the right side. This is why right-handedness is so common. Now, truly left-sided is about 5% of the population, and there's a little, I've done some research on this, and there's a little bit of, there's not agreement on why that occurs. It could be that the hemispheres are switched. That's one of the hypotheses, but basically, we just want the brain to pick a side. We just want everything to be on the right. Eye, ear, hand, and foot dominance should all be on one side, and this is something I check when children come in, especially if they're having any issues. If there is mixed dominance, so let's just say like it's right-sided everything but the left ear, then that means any sensory information coming to the ear for hearing, auditory, is going to have to ping around in the brain until it figures out where it's supposed to go. It's not a direct route. And this is where there may be a delay in processing of sensory information. I'm going to have just a brief description here of functional disconnection syndrome. I have done a video on this, and I'll put that in the description, where I go over a little bit of what I just talked about and then take you further into what this means. But basically, there is a disconnect in the communication between the right and the left hemisphere. So when that occurs and the brain can't talk to each other, there's going to be issues per se if one side of the brain is stronger than the other and thinks it's the boss of the other. So if the left side is stronger and the right side is weaker, you're going to have that left side portraying those things that I just talked about. And like I said, I do go into this in more depth, so I'm not going to take any time here. I'll put that link and you can check it out. But the great thing about functional disconnection syndrome means there's not a brain problem. There's no pathology. There's no disease. It's what we call epigenetic. And that means that there are things in the environment that are turning genes on and off, and that these are things that are under our control and that we can change and work with. So this is something I do on a daily basis to help kids with behavior issues, academic issues, social, whatever is going on. If there's something going on, I can figure out which side thinks it's stronger and where in the brain, and then help with some activities that kids can do. And if you want to figure out if your child has an issue with brain imbalance, just get a hold of me. I'm going to put my contact info at the end, and I will send you a worksheet you can fill out to see if possibly one side is stronger or weaker than the other. This just kind of puts everything together with the left and the right side and all the abilities and what each side does. And then if there is a deficit, some things that will occur with that. So you can take a look at that. All right, we have come to the end. Thank you so much for joining me. There is my website there if you want to contact me. I'll put the direct link in the description. As I said, I am board certified in pediatrics and pregnancy, certified in childhood developmental disorders. I've been a chiropractor for 30 years, actually more now. I have 3 children. And of course, I love to do in-office services, but if someone is not in the area, I can help out on a lot of things, doing it remotely. And I have other things related to the brain and development and helping that connectivity with things like interactive metronome, bio and neurofeedback, etc., etc. All right, so if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, see if this is a good fit. Please like, subscribe, and share. It really does make a difference. Just takes a second to click that little thumbs up. And if you subscribe, then you are going to know when I come online, because sometimes, like today, I've come on at a different time, and then you will know when I post a video. Please share, because a lot of people don't understand and know about what chiropractic and functional neurology can do for their children. So this is really a life changer, a game changer for so many families that are struggling. I've had so many families come in where the parents are at the end of the rope. They don't know what to do. And we've been able to work together and help these kids so that they're healthier and happier, and really the whole family benefits. All right, I will see you next time. I believe I'm going to start with milestone development next week. Thanks so much.